part 2 of the demo. Last week, you guys did, rectangular primitive shapes, and essentially what we're going to be doing with those boxes that you guys made, most of you guys should have done the assignment, is that we're going to start plotting our design and using different angles to project what our design is going to be in 3D. Okay. So I'm going to start off with a blank sheet of paper, and in order to find my angle, I'm creating z-axis points. These lines. That's going to be the angle that it's tilting at. Okay. Depending on how high or how low we want the camera to be, okay, it's going to be solely dependent on your x-axis. All right. If I did something like that, then it almost looks like we're looking straight, 3/4 straight down at it. Okay? I'll show you the difference. If I did something like that, it almost looks like we have a more front slider 3/4 view, but it's not so much looking at the top. You guys understand that? You guys understand how these axes kind of set up the angle in which your vehicle is going to be placed?
So the z-axis, what is that? Is that indicating like the direction it's pointed?
Yes.
Okay.
So the x-axis is anything that's horizontal, and the z-axis is anything that's pushing out front and back. Okay, the y-axis is height. Okay. You guys see how there's a difference in angle from this perspective line and that perspective line information? So, what I want to do is I want to use this information to start blocking out my vehicle roughs. Okay, you guys obviously have different vehicles and different silhouettes to work off of. And at this stage, just keep it basic. Just do yourself a favor. You don't have to go into the complex stuff, but just do boxes for now, just to block out and model out these things. Okay? And if your vehicle had multiple shapes and it's not just one big box, if it had like some kind of skinnier front or skinnier back, then I want you guys to start making those projections. All right? Do you guys have any questions in regards to doing these 3D shape block-ins?
If you wanted to find like the horizon line, because if your vehicle starts to get like really tall, right?
Right.
There's a possibility that, because we're not plotting a horizon on this, like that it would go above the horizon line.
Well, that's where, for example, this is a good one where we're almost eye level with this one, but it's slightly tilted. Mm-hmm. The horizon, you can kind of almost imagine it being, it's going to be not too high up, but it's going to be high enough that, we will hit it at a certain point.
Yeah.
So when that happens, if I had my box here, and if I were to make a box on top of that, then the horizon would definitely come into play, because you're only seeing so much of the top that it starts to flatten out really quickly. This is a classic example here. You see how we're not seeing much of the top there?
Yeah.
That's when you'll run into that case. Okay? And when it goes past this horizon line, then you'll start running into seeing more of the underside of this box.
John, do you make any consideration for, like, if you were photographing this, what kind of lens you'd use to either kind of compress or exaggerate some of the perspective? Like if you're using like a longer lens, so it's gonna get closer to sort of orthographic versus like a wider angle where you might have more extreme perspective.
It'd be like in between. I'm not sure what the numbers would be. Like I guess 50 mil.
Okay, so
I mean,
sort of like standard
human eye. You always want to use human eye. I mean, the more exaggerated you go, if you use longer lens, then it's flattening out the depth perception. But if you're using like super wide angle, then you're exaggerating some of your point of views. So for this stage, I mean, just to build off of these boxes that I made, I'm going to start putting in or adding on like different shapes to start sculpting my my vehicle. Okay. When I do wheels, I always start off with a box, like a long rectangular box form. And I always plot my wheels in here. I always treat my wheels like it's a giant cylinder. Do you guys understand how I'm doing that? Okay. It's just a really quick way to kind of get the front side and the back side of your wheels. And just to make sure that they're both in perspective. I remember for some of you guys, this stuff is new. For other you guys, this stuff is review. Art Center. If you guys went to Art Center, they pretty much drilled this stuff into us. We had to do like a couple hundred of these. But this is a really good practice because it becomes very intuitive and second nature when you're drawing, because now you're designing and sculpting at the same time, But if this is your first time doing perspective, you kind of want to just do a quick overview of this stuff. Any questions so far on this stuff? Okay, my second set I'm going to use not box forms, but more, I guess, organic, complex shapes. And the way I like to do these is I just want to have a really rough idea of like this front side here, what the middle shape is going to be like, and the back side. Okay?
One question, John.
Yeah.
Well, I find when I use like the ruler all the time when I'm doing drawings like this, if you're off just like a millimeter, it starts to screw up your drawing.
Yeah.
And it seems like by keeping it loose and freehand the way you're doing it, you can kind of avoid or ignore that kind of stuff. Would you say there's maybe an advantage to doing it freehand for this kind of block-in exploration?
It's primarily because it's smaller. I think working at a decent scale, I mean, if this is a larger drawing, I would definitely use rulers and, make sure that everything's, perpendicular and parallel and whatnot. But, because this is a smaller scale drawing, we have an easier way of guesstimating, vanishing lines are vanishing, horizontal lines are horizontal, and they're vanishing, vertically and things like that. So, and this is kind of, after you guys practice a lot of perspective, you can start to kind of skip multiple steps when it comes to this stuff. Right? just for the demo's sake, I mean, obviously you guys should be boxing in everything. But when you get comfortable where you can project, a front, middle, and back, after you've done a good amount of these, you can start to just do it freehand, and just start creating forms, not getting too overloaded with these guidelines everywhere. Because then it just becomes like a huge, guideline mess, and then you start to lose your design. It's just like overloaded with like, perspective lines and like vertical lines, and like it's hard to design within that frame, So this is just a shortcut to kind of get you guys to speed up the process in creating shapes in perspective.
You typically usually want to be looking down at the object, I guess, in the design.
It's up to you. I mean, it's preference. I mean, for this, for vehicles, I tend to like doing a 3/4.
Like if something was really big, would you maybe want to look up at it, or?
Yeah, I mean, it tells a better narrative, but when you're designing, you generally want to see the front, top, and
I see.
side, because yeah, you want to show that, oh, it's in scale, it's really, really big, but you kind of want to show as much information as possible, because you're going to hand it off to the modelers and things like that.
Right.
I'm going to draw in my center line here. Create more forms. Okay. And then from here, it's like, now we can start building shapes on top of this. Like, what if I had a window of an airplane? You're going to have these kinds of sections. Things like that. And this is where it can get really complex, so just do yourself a favor, make sure you run through all the rules of creating these compound forms, these complex shapes. And once you get a good handle on that, then you can start free-forming or freehanding this stuff without creating too many, guidelines everywhere, because then again, you're going to lose your design in this process. It's very easy to get lost in this stuff. What if I had, again, I'm using my my volumetric guidelines here just to kind of know how the side bends. Okay? And I'm going to plot in shapes onto the side of this thing. So it feels like it's meshing in together.
So if the 3/4 layout, is that like not really 2-point, or is it 2-point perspective?
This is 2-point.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be slightly 2-3-point. Because, I mean, you're going to have your x-axes converging, right? All in this direction. And you're going to have your z-axes converging to these two corners. Okay? Your y, which is your vertical, if you plot out all your y-axes, they're all going to be converging downward. Okay? And when you're converging downward, you're suggesting, you're stating that, okay, we're looking from above.
Right.
Okay? If it's converging upward, then you're saying that we're looking up at the object, not down at the object. Okay? So just think reverse. bases. You know, this is like really huge monolithic size vehicle. Maybe there's like 50 wheels on this thing, or it's a tank tread or something.
So would you say the ellipse guide is something that you just kind of use initially to get a feel for it, and then tend to not really use it too much afterwards?
No, you want to use ellipse guides and rulers and things like that when you're doing a larger scale drawing.
Okay.
The only reason why I'm not using ellipse guides here is because, one, it doesn't exist at this size. It's like ridiculously small, and it's just better to freehand. And you know, when you're doing like freehand exploration drawings, you kind of don't want to be tied down to all your other tools except, you know, pen and paper or pencil and paper, you know? So, everyone pretty clear on that? Do you guys all understand? I know I'm going really, really fast, but this is how we're going to start building these 3D forms in space. So you're going to start ideating in this manner. Okay? To continue on with the lecture. So for homework, guys, I want you guys to just, you know, do a ton of different views. I believe next week we're not meeting because of Memorial Weekend. So, you know, I'm not going to give you guys too much homework, but enough to last you guys for the 2 weeks or for the week that you guys aren't here. Yeah, no problem. Happy holidays. Such a douche. Sorry.
I heard Eric was gonna come give a demo.
Eric?
Yeah.
Yeah. Eric Ng. I love that guy. That guy's awesome. What's that? He's dangerous? He is. He's like the teddy bear that turns into like a grizzly bear. Yeah, man, he can do some damage. I mean, for those of you guys, again, if this stuff is too complex, keep it simple. Okay, number one rule, keep it simple for yourself. Basic shapes, square, triangle, cube, or, you know, square and a cube is the same, like rectangle, things like that. Just keep it very primitive, all right?
Are we going off of our designs and now actually trying to develop them three-dimensionally? Or is this still like kind of free-form exploration?
Well, the first, I'm going to give you a homework assignment soon. I'll lay it out for you guys. But eventually you're going to be working off of your design, okay? Because you guys have been working profile view, there's no real indication of like how far the forms come out. You can have a container or a panel on the side, but you don't know how thick or wide or tall, or you're going to know how tall it is, but you're not going to know like how far it's being projected, okay? And that's what I want you guys to kind of play with.
And as far as like keeping a consistency between like your designs, like if you were to design something in this like three-quarter view, but you wanted to like design it from another view and have it be all the same lengths and stuff, like, would you want to derive like a top view from it, or would you want to do that first, sort of? Just, you know what I mean?
Meaning projecting the same design on a different view?
Yeah, and have it be the same.
The
like,
same?
Same depth of everything.
Generally, you
Or is
want
that
to...
not that important, to be exact?
Well, I mean, it is. That's a really great question. I mean, you know, you're going to come to a situation where you're going to be asked to do a front three-quarter and a back three-quarter. Okay? And when you're doing that, you want to keep in mind the basic volumes that your vehicle occupies. Okay? So let's say, let me just finish this one up real quick so you guys understand. Trent. Notice when I'm doing these cylinders or the wheels, I'm always creating a cylinder. Okay? Even though if you guys have a wheel here and it's not the whole wheel's not a cylinder, the front wheel is going to always hit the other side of the wheel. But if we were to dissect these, like let's say we have our, we have our ellipse here, right? This is a cross section, okay? And let's say this is the perspective in which, you know, the ellipse or the wheel sits in. This midpoint right here, which is the minor axis, it's just a guideline that cuts in between, like straight in the center of the cylinder. So if our cylinder went off and it landed somewhere out here, right? But obviously your wheel's not going to be like, it's not going to be 4 feet long or thick. It's going to be somewhat, you know, thinner, like to match like a regular car wheel or a truck wheel. So what you want to do is you want to make that measurement by dissecting the box that it's in. Okay? Use the information, the cross information here, to find the midpoint, the side midpoint, and top midpoint. That way you can find these points to project your ellipse on this side. You guys all get that? Okay, it's just like, again, if I had a cylinder, I'd chop it in half, right? But you need to create these guidelines in order to know like exactly what the angle of that other ellipse is going to be. You should have your wheel. Okay? So Evan, you mentioned doing a same design but different view.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's always going to be a really hard one, and my recommendation is, that's why I had you guys do the simple shape breakdowns, is because you have to know just volumetrically how, like, what does your vehicle look like if it was in the most simplified view, okay? And if I had a vehicle that was just, you know, this truck, wheel, and I had a container in the back, 2 wheels here, right? I'm gonna literally draw these elements in perspective, but it's gonna tell me how many pieces I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 components, and I'm gonna be able to identify what's gonna be a rectangle, what's gonna be a square, and what areas are gonna be cylindrical, right? So if I drew the container of this vehicle, okay, and I drew the wheels down here. Remember to box everything in. And so I drew a box up here that represented this shape here. Guideline, draw a box, creating points so I know exactly what degree my ellipse is. Project the ellipses so it hits one side to the other. So that's, I mean, that's like my basic Bakken for this vehicle, right? I have all my information. I have 3 cylinders, 1 rectangle, and 1 like squared off kind of box, right? So let's say we did another view, like let's say it's in this angle, and let's say the front is over here and the back is here. The front and the back, right? Just like how I plotted this box, I'm just gonna start here. Do the same measurements. I mean, at this stage you can kind of eyeball it, but when you do your final drawing, you can take measurements, like, you know, just use like a ruler or something, and you can measure like, okay, this is like 7 centimeters or something.
And then just use the same.
Use the same simplified volume information to project this vehicle, but facing the other direction.
That way it'll be from the exact same camera spot, just the vehicle has been rotated.
Exactly. I mean, you can do different camera angles, but
It's like the distance from the camera and the angle is gonna like influence how long those lines are.
yeah. I mean, the most important thing is making sure that when you're plotting a different view of this vehicle, that these shapes are going to be a good simplistic representation to kind of use as cues to kind of set up a different point of view, you know? Because it's the same, I mean, this box in theory, like if I were to measure it mathematically, I'm sure it's not the same volume as that. But
But like when the modelers, for instance, like take it in and then start to build their model, I mean, as long as it's close enough, they're the ones that are actually making it exact.
exactly. I mean, a lot of, you know, turning your vehicle is just for design.
I mean, I guess it would matter more if you were actually designing a real vehicle that was going to be made.
Yeah. I mean, if you're, yeah, exactly, finding like exact measurements and things like that.
And if you're designing for 3D folks, just kind of eliminating the guesswork. So,
As much as possible.
or if you show something from a different angle, that's, like I've received stuff that's like, the front is one way and the back is like totally different.
Yeah.
So,
But then in that case, it's just the modeler's job to kind of figure it out, right, and make it up, kind of.
yeah, or it has to go back to the design and like, hey, what were you thinking here?
Yeah, it gets stuck doing the whole thing, which is terrible.
Yeah.
Do you guys understand how I projected? I used these simple shapes, you know, these cues to kind of project the same design but in a different angle. Okay? And when you guys want to make the same design but using like a different angle, like you want to switch the views, like let's say you're doing like a front 3/4 from left to right, but you want to switch it like right to left, right? Just simplify the geometry. Okay, just like that's why I had you guys simplify your silhouettes into very basic primitive shapes or breakdowns, you're going to use that volumetric information to project your vehicle. Okay? You guys have any questions in regards to what we just talked about right here?
And basically, when you reproject into a different angle, you're just kind of eyeballing the proportions to.
Correct. I mean, I know that this is going to be, you know, more rectangular and this is going to be more of a box and I'm going to have 3 cylinders.
Right.
But it's not going to be an exact, like, this rectangle is approximately 4 inches in
Right, well,
height.
this-
And
If it's changing in perspective, you can't actually measure it, but it's more like the ratios.
yeah. Yeah, you want
This
to
might be like
keep
2
a general
boxes in
ratio.
one box.
Correct. Correct. So any questions? All right.